It is as windy as hell here at the moment. It is the middle of winter. It is the 17th of July and it's reasonably warm, but it's windy. We're very cold in the mornings. Now, I live in the northern part of Sydney, which is just over the bridge. It's called Crow's Nest. And it's 5 minutes from town. And as you can see, I'm getting buffeted about here. Now, the great thing about living in Sydney is the diversity of the little bits of terrain around the place. There's quite wooded country areas within fairly close proximity to where I live, and that's, as I say, 5 minutes from the harbour bridge. And we're going through this leafy glade now, which is, my Scala keeps interrupting. If you hear it, I don't know if you can, but this is known as the back end of Lane Cove, and it's quite forested with the old traditional Australian gum trees, and it's probably the hilliest part of Sydney actually. Now, one of the things I want to do with my little video logs, and that is show you a bit around Sydney, have a bit of a grumble, and hopefully if I get the opportunity, I've already done one major trip on this bike, and that was from Sydney to Adelaide, but I didn't have the camera gear at the moment, that I have at the moment. I didn't have the camera gear then, so unfortunately I didn't get a lot of it on film. But that was a 1900 kilometre trip down the coast from Sydney, down through the New South Wales coast, down the Victorian coast, through the entrance, or the lake's entrance as they call it, down to the mouth of Port Phillip Bay. Now, that's where Phillip Island racetrack is, for those of you who are into motorcycle racing. And unfortunately, as I say, I didn't have the camera with me, and so I don't have any footage, but it was the height of summer, and the day I went down to Phillip Island, it rained like you wouldn't believe. It was absolutely teeming, to the point where my wet weather gear just said, oh, I give up. And as you know, with motorcycles, the water runs off the tank straight down between your legs and puddles in a little area known to mankind as the nutsack. And even with wet weather pants on, I was getting a puddle in there, so it was quite unbearable. But by the time I got to the mouth of Port Phillip Bay, it had stopped, and I took my wet weather gear off, and it was close to 27, 28 degrees, so I actually just rode in the sun and the warm wind until it dried out. So that was the only way I got dry. However, my boots didn't. They stayed soaking. Now, that trip, as I say, took 1900 kilometres down that way, and coming back from Adelaide, I came up through the centre of the country, and that took me through South Australia, Victoria, up into New South Wales, and I stopped at a place called Hay. Now, Hay is virtually dead centre between Sydney and Adelaide, going through the central country area. Basically, it is a salt flat, an old sea lake, as Australia used to have an inland sea. So basically it's a great big mangrove swampy marsh, but it's got a hard cake surface, so it looks like a desert. Now, this place is like a cauldron. I have pictures of my thermometer on my dashboard of the bike, and it was 6:30 at night, and it was 47 degrees Celsius. I kid you not. I decided not to camp that night, as you could understand. It was too hot, and I was too dehydrated. So what I decided to do was get into a motel. I found one right next to the pub. How fortunate is that? Jumped in the shower, cooled down, emptied the contents of the fridge, i.e. whatever cold water and beer that was in there, and then went next door to the pub and managed to get myself something to eat and drink another 4 pints. Now, needless to say, after drinking about 6 or 7 pints of alcohol beer, you would think that you'd be completely and utterly shit-faced. Well, I wasn't. I was so dehydrated. I think the whole lot just went straight through me, went out to the skin and then sweated it out again, but the alcohol just evaporated off, I think. So I was quite happy to just sit there quietly in the cool of the pub and drink a few beers. After leaving after leaving Hay, I travelled on to Parkes. Now Parkes is up closer towards Sydney, and it is where the satellite dish is that received this television signal from the 1969 July moon landing, which is basically today, or thereabouts. I don't know, it's July 20th or July 19th or something, whatever. So, and this is 2014, and that was in 1969, and it seemed like a lifetime ago, and I was a young lad then, and I remember watching it on the television. So, for the bit of curiosity's sake, I had to go to Parkes and have a look. And, you know, when you think about it, it's not probably one of the greatest visual sights to see. There's a satellite dish in the middle of a farm, but because they've done the movie of it, and also the significance of history, or I should say the historical significance, it was worth going to see. And there's a lot of information there that you can go into the observatory room and they show you what was going on then and a bit about the movie and so forth. So it was quite interesting. And it was still bloody hot, even so hot that the birds were having a shower underneath a sprinkler system, and there were signs everywhere, beware of snakes. You know, welcome to Australia, the land where everything can kill you. It took me 3 nights and 4 days to travel down to Adelaide, and I came back in 2 days, 1 night, which was about 1,000 kilometres on the way back. So the round trip was close on to 3,000 k's. And I have to say the KTM performed flawlessly. I never enjoyed life so much. It was quite good fun. And I hope to do a hell of a lot more of that sort of thing as a kamikaze. And hopefully share that with you. Now, we've had this wee little jaunt. I'm almost home. I live in that building that you can see dead ahead. We're almost home now, so I will bid you farewell, and we'll catch up to you next time, so tune in soon.